you. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Government Operations Committee, Thursday, September 5th, 2024. We do have quorum, and hopefully our fifth member will arrive shortly. Do we have any changes to the agenda? That would be no. Comments from the public? Don't see anyone. We haven't heard from anyone. Let's take the minutes from August 1st. Can I have somebody move those? Rich moves, seconded by Susan. Questions, comments, changes? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. It looks like we have an advisory board appointment that was put on your desk.
Sorry, apologize.
Let's see, this is for Board of Assessment Review. Martha Preston, at-large member, term expires September 30th, 2029. Can somebody move that? Greg moves, Rich seconds. Questions, comments? Rich.
I have said this before, but I'm always impressed with the quality of the people in our community that step up to do this really difficult, kind of thankless work, but important.
Yes, thankless and volunteer work. Anything else? All in favor? Susan?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we're going to turn over to our communications director, Dominic Recchio, who has a couple of things to talk to us about.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. I have two things that I would like to share with the group today. The first thing is going to be a quick overview and run through of the design, the final design for the new Tompkins County website. Before I share my screen, I'll just share that we've spent all 9 months of this year working on the website so far, and that's broken out into a few different pieces. The piece you're going to see today is really just the visual design that I've shown a few previews of in the past, but this is more of the final look and feel of the site. The other piece that's happening in the background is the content migration. So right now, we took all of the pages on our website, which was around 1,000, and I worked with all of the departments to consolidate that information into around 600 pages. So it's going to be, the website's going to be a lot easier to navigate, a lot clearer for users. Outdated information will be gone, at least when we launch the site, and then new outdated information will start. But we have better processes to clean it up. The vendor that we're using is a very modern vendor that works with governments all over the United States. So I'm very excited to be working with them. They're called Granicus. They're the same site, or same vendor that does the email newsletter software that we send, as well as the Legistar software that the clerk's office will be using. So with that brief overview, I will share with you the design that we have. This design follows internal working group of county employees, including IT, some department heads, public information officers, and some other folks. It's very similar to the wireframe that I shared with you May or June of this year. But a few key highlights that I'll run through that'll be of value to you. So in this top bar here, where folks will be able to access translated content of the website, we're still, at least for the next year, going to be able to continue with the translation program. I think that'll come up in the budget process perhaps as well. The siren alerts and siren information can be accessed here, the YouTube and our newsletter. One of the biggest changes to the site, one of the things I'm most excited about, is that people will be able to access a majority of our departments and divisions immediately from the homepage. So we've broken out some information here you'll see, and the there's just examples from a city. It's just the design. It's really just a PDF with some functionality that you're seeing now. So those aren't about our departments, but you'll be able to hover over resident services, government resources, all departments, and about, and you'll be able to navigate directly into information from all of our departments. So resident services is really something that we're taking a different tact on with the new site, directing people more easily and directly to things like social services, whole health, and other programs that are direct services. Government resources will have things like Board of Elections, Legislature, et cetera. All departments will have everyone, and about will have things like the budget. We're not going to put a staff directory on here necessarily, but things that you would generally find in an about page, careers, human resources, some things like that. This image is just a placeholder image, just showing you the sort of scope. I was joking, I think maybe last time, that it's nice to see a paved road. People are always complaining about roads, so I want to make sure that we're showing off our best. But I have several photos that Rob has taken with similar framing and county employees that will go in that location. One that I'm really excited about, I haven't replaced it here yet, but we got some photos from the Welcoming New Citizens naturalization ceremony that was held by the Clerk's department. I think that's going to be a real showstopper there. And then these next links here, these are just what we're kind of calling quick links. They can be replaced over time, but for now, we based these 6 on analysis of the pages that people are most frequently accessing or information that we want people to be able to get to very quickly right from the homepage. The Career Center, the Clerk's Office, DMV, Board of Elections. The recycling is on there specifically because we are moving the recycling site to this website. So that'll be a little bit of cost savings as well when it comes to recycling and materials management. And then assessments is last. You'll see it's in alphabetical order except for assessments, because when I show you the mobile website, the only thing you would see is assessments. So I don't want people to only see assessments when they click on the site. I want that to be one of many things. So I did move that off of the alphabetical order. I didn't want to have to do that. But this tool here, I've described. Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Recycling was on its own website?
That is true. RecycleTompkins.org is its own third-party website managed by a different designer than the county's website.
Do you know how that ever happened, that it grew that way?
I think there was limited functionality on our old website to forward these departments. It has not been modernized in quite some time, and so, well, the recycling and the airport are 2 standalone sites. The airport's going to continue on its own standalone site. We went through this process with them. I think some of their consultants suggested that most, if not all, airports consumer-facing have their own websites, which I agree with. But recycling, as it is a function of Tompkins County, I believe should absolutely live on this site now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. I've described this section before. This is just a new way to navigate our services, and I don't have the list of how people will use that drop-down yet. Once it's built out, I'll come back and share a little bit more about it. But it's imagining, filtering by services for families, and then the next one would be mental health, and then the middle box would show you all of the mental health services for families that we link to or offer, and you could navigate to those, just as an example. News and highlights, you'll know now on our website. If a department publishes a press release, it doesn't always show up on the county's homepage, and vice versa. This will centralize all news from all departments here. We'll be able to use way more photos and drive people to that. The legislature section will look a little different on the county's homepage. Each committee will have its own, these are kind of called cards. Each committee will have its own card, and you'll be able to sort of swipe through them.
Sorry, can you put this on the government operations?
I think we could probably get a trophy on there.
The trophy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or at least the color, the Sears, the teal. I always forget when I come in on Thursdays. But you'll be able to click through. I can't swipe again. It's sort of a PDF. But you'll be able to view all meetings and agendas. And then this is sort of an About Tompkins County section. I have a couple updated photos here to go as well, but this is an opportunity for us to put our values, diversity and equity and inclusion, and employment right on the homepage with some photos that reflect what we have going on at Tompkins County. and then some other links, just as a normal footer. I'm just going to click through a few other pages in the site to show you some functionality. I was talking about that mobile site earlier. This is how it will show up. I can't zoom in, unfortunately, but this is how it will show up on a phone. This little menu bar up here on the right will bring you to the same resident services, government resources, all departments. And then it's sort of the same exact outline, but much more accessible on the phone. One thing folks will remember from our current site is that the menu bars for departments live on the bottom of the web page instead of the top. It's the only website I've ever experienced with that happening. That will no longer be the case with the new site. So that alone, I feel like, justifies the value of moving to this. And then here's just a few examples of what some landing pages might look like. Ability for departments to have much more attractive buttons to click people through, background photos. This is a photo heading out toward Newfield that Rob took on the drone, but departments might be able to put their building or staff or something in the background. Some departments or services page would probably look like this, where you're able to sort of navigate a menu, a lot clearer, cleaner text, buttons that are more clearly clickable and easier to add, and some other just functionality and designs. We'll be able to use tools like this for upcoming events. Maybe it's, I don't know if we'd do it for public hearings, but imagine, an example would be, upcoming public hearings, and they could be listed out in a nice, friendly way where each one could be sort of clicked to its own web page. And a very similar function to this will also be how we post jobs from the county in an easily accessible way. So right now, if you want to share a job posting, you got to share a PDF. That's not always the most attractive way to get someone to think about working at Tompkins County. Those will still have to exist per civil service rules, but we'll also be able to sort of cross-post or just copy and paste the short job description onto a nicer web page that's much more attractive, tells the story, easily shareable, searchable. I'm very excited about the ability to do that. And then, here's just a few other examples of some tabs, and we can talk about how processes work at the county. I can imagine this being something the assessment department uses, for example, to say, this is what happens at this date, and this is what happens at this date. So a lot more ability to do things like that. And that's the overall design, but I just wanted to keep you aware as we're going. It looks like departments will be able to take all the content on the new site and make sure it's the way they want it to look and feel starting in the third week of October. And that will leave us for around December to launch the new site. That is the current goal. And it looks like everything is on track for that. And I will continue to keep you updated as we go along. But yeah, take any questions about this.
Okay, questions? Susan?
Not a question, just a big thank you. I mean, the county website has been frustrating for years. It's an enormous project, and really looking forward to putting the information out to my district because they ask me questions about the website all the time. So thank you for all the work that you and everyone did.
Yeah, thank you for funding the change to a new vendor from the legislature. It's a really big deal.
Mike?
Rich's question about the airport, even if it's not on the our website, is there a button that they can get to real quick, like on the beginning, saying if you want airport, it switches them over to the airport website?
I'm not sure which of these 4 links at the top it will live under. Probably resident services and all departments, if I had to guess. So when you hover over that, immediately the airport will show up. I don't think there's another natural place right on the current homepage for it. I also will say one of the things I did before building out the homepage or recommending it, studying the paths people were clicking from and to within the website, and the airport's currently listed on our homepage, and there truly have not been many clicks from the homepage to the airport site. I still think it should be navigated from there, but in terms of these 6, for example, these are ones that a lot more people were driving to.
Well, on the current website, how do you get to the airport website?
Let's see. On the current website, you would scroll down and find it over here on the quick links, and it is listed as Fly ITH, which I also wouldn't recommend calling it that necessarily, but I'd probably list it as the airport because that's what people probably know it as more. But that is how they would get there.
Okay, and that, I understand that, but what you said on the new one, you would have to go to something called services and stuff. That I would think would be an impediment if it doesn't just say airport.
It's a good question. I think the way that we've looked at it is that there's a few different types of users. I don't have much evidence at this time that users who are coming to the homepage of the county's website are looking to find the airport. If they're looking to find the airport, they're almost certainly Googling the airport directly or going to that website on their own. But I also want people who come to our site to know we have an airport, and you add it as a part of the overall airport marketing to remind people that we have one. So I am noting that, and I think that's important to remember along the way, and I'll continue to think about that.
One more.
Go ahead,
Rich.
Mike.
And the other question I have is, how do people get to our streaming of our meetings?
The first, this YouTube button right here is the place where most people will probably click off to if they know that it's streaming. Otherwise, that information is accessible from each of these pages if they go to those legislature committees or the viewing all meetings and agendas.
So you go to a committee, for example, and there'll be a button that says streaming, or what does it say?
Yeah, the new Legistar system is what this will link directly to. That'll also have a video feed, the same video feed that we send to IQM2 for the full meetings of the legislature. And then the YouTube information is available on any of the materials that would be prepared there as well.
Rich?
Yeah, to Mike's question, there's 6 buttons across the screen there. Could there be 7? Do you have the capability? I know you don't want it to be too busy.
It's 6 or 12 in how they do it. So we could go with 12, and if we get to that rate where we feel like there's enough things to add another layer, we could grow it to 12. I think based on the feedback from the web designers, they don't recommend that. Some of the sites that use 12 are a little busy. There's some custom elements to this that are really custom to Tompkins County, but with our budget, we're limited to a few. This one is a 6 or 12 is the non-custom element.
And are you going to use the words YouTube or something more descriptive of, meeting access or something like that?
That's a good question. I think it could be called stream meetings. I put YouTube there originally because we also post videos about our departments and such, so it's a little more broad than that, but it could be called videos and meeting streams. I think that's reasonable for folks to access.
Susan?
I would just add that I think YouTube is such an established way of people accessing information that maybe you could do what you suggested and then /YouTube.
For people that do it, but for people who don't, they have no idea what YouTube is the issue. But yeah, maybe it's ubiquitous at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, but I think probably most people who, if they're using the internet, know what YouTube is. Maybe on the individual committee pages, it could be spelled out a little bit more, streaming and, meeting videos or something. But I would think you wouldn't want the top bar there to get too wordy. And then I guess just back to the airport question, I think what you said makes sense, that it would be under all departments because it is one of our departments. And it could be under resident services too, but I think also what you said makes sense, that people aren't really coming to our website to look up the airport. I mean, I don't when I go to the airport
Yeah, and
page.
I've spoken to the airport folks quite a bit about how they'd like to be, referenced here, and there's certainly more to change over time as they continue to grow and adapt, and This site will allow us to do that a lot easier than the old site. The old site, the only thing we could do was put it in that list on the right. This site, we could try different things. We could, update or replace things if needed.
Yeah. Did you have your hand up, Mike?
Just if we went to 12 buttons, I would think a button for history and a button for the college would make sense.
Okay. Anything else? We should probably move on to the next topic. Thank you so much. I think it looks great, and I'm very excited to see it unfold more.
Yeah. The next thing I'm going to share very briefly is you'll remember that in 2023, we sent a mailer to all county residents, relatively comprehensive guide of Tompkins County resources. I'll show you quickly. This was what it looked like in 2023, but I won't spend time there because we're updating some things. This follows several past mailers that we've done since 2020. We did one related to COVID-19 vaccines and safety information during the pandemic. We did one when we launched Siren, alerting people to that, and we did one when the 988 mental health crisis line was started. And all three of those sort of led us to think, okay, we should do an annual from Tompkins County overview of everything that the county has to offer. And this is the draft design, nearly final draft design for the second year of this. This is funded through an OTR, both the past 2 years. What you'll see, a few main differences here. One is that I went from like 5 or 6 headers of information that were very detailed about what you'd get into to just 3 general buckets: supporting residents, transparent government, and community resources. The transparent government language is really a new thing for this, but I felt that people being able to find our news releases, public meetings, voting, plans, advisory board, county published data, maps. It's sort of a new framing of that, helping people understand how to access their government. So that's really a change. And on the very bottom, you'll see that I've added towns, villages, city, and state. Got some feedback last year from people who got this. Oh, okay, this is from the county, but what about my city or town? I can't put all of that information here, but what I have done is I've updated the county's website where it talks about the towns and villages, added an interactive map that helps you know where you live, in what municipalities, and then sort of listed the types of resources you can find from your towns and villages. And on the flip side of the mailer is a resident checklist. This was really popular last year, of just what are the things you should do as a resident that you might not be thinking of that Tompkins County has, and it's everything from some programs like energy savings through CCE to direct things from the county like our Tompkins Ready emergency preparedness. And then I added in the strategic plan as well, because it was very timely that people might be interested in what Tompkins County's plans for the future are. So I just wanted to share this with you as I'm getting some final feedback from department heads and planning to send it out within the next month.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm glad that we have the funding to do this right now. Mike?
Yeah, and to that point, this is great, and it's useful for people. I like it going out. You said it's an over target. If you didn't want to do it in 2025, do we have to have another over target?
Yes, I do not believe it's funded in the base recommended 2025 budget at this time. It is around, mailing prices are fluctuate a little bit with the paper prices and things, because we print 47,000 of these, which is a lot. But that's just south of $20,000 is the estimate.
Is that a recommended over target or this year?
I don't believe it's a recommended over target at this time.
Not good.
Rich, and then Greg.
Yeah, I like this. We are heading into a very tough budget year, so we're going to have to think about this. I had one comment that the help is available 24/7, dial 988. If there was some way to make that a little bit more prominent, because you want it to be prominent, and it's still relatively new, but you're the graphic person. I read this and I see we run the risk of people finding out what we do, which is scary. But
yes,
I'm curious whether you have any sense of uptake. Do people put this on their refrigerator?
I did.
It's a really good question, and I've designed this with that goal in mind to be able to tell uptake. You'll see here that we use the short link on everything, tcgov.co. That's something that uses a system called Bitly, which allows us to create the QR codes and the short links, and I can track monthly how many people use each short link. So as soon as I send this out, I start tracking, okay, how many people are clicking to each of these resources. So part of the changes from last year's to this year is that I looked at all of the clicks to how many people were accessing each of those things directly from the mailer. Now, some of these are used in some other settings, so there's a little variance there. I think we probably, in the first month of sending this out, across all 30 links that we had 300 to 400 clicks directly to those links. I do not know that someone, I think it may have even been Bridget, was giving me some feedback that, you know, if I got this in the mail, I'd hold on to it and just Google Tompkins County when I'm ready for this. That's what I hear more people sort of talking about. So I can track some of the uptake. The uptake on the exact clicks is more in the hundreds, which feels a little low from where I'd like it to be. But that's part of the change. 211 didn't notice any immediate uptake in calls to 211 last year either.
I'm wondering if there's something you could do on here to invite response to say, I like this, or, you know, feedback, you know, and to also say, do you see anything missing? What would you like to see on this?
That's great. I've certainly asked department heads and the Human Services Coalition, specifically that last piece, to make sure that I'm not missing anything as we go along.
But that might be a way to gauge whether the public's recycling this or putting it on the fridge.
Yeah.
Very good.
Greg?
Is this printed using a local vendor?
It is. Arnold Printing.
Great. That's all I was hoping for.
Where does the QR code go?
To a web page on the site that we created new last year with this campaign, the services page, that has everything on here listed. So if someone wanted to go find everything that's on the mailer in one spot on the website, and the page has to be updated a little bit once I finalize this design, but it brings you to everything, and they're able to access everything from our programs, the community college, everything that we have on here.
Okay, great. I think it looks great. I'm glad we're doing this. Yeah, hard budget year ahead, but I guess we'll see. Anything else on this, or do you have any other updates you want to share?
I've taken a lot of your time. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time today.
Great. Well, we're always happy to hear from you. Okay. All right, we are moving on to assessment, and we have just a few things to talk about with Jay. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me as I trip over books.
Do you want to start with any updates or anything you want to share, and then we can get into the resolution?
No, I think we got enough exemptions to go through. I learned my lesson. I thought doing 4 would be easy, but because they're all similar, but they're not. And you're only going to get one at a time from now on.
All right, let's jump on in then. Can I have somebody move the first resolution authorizing a public hearing on proposed law, local law number C of 2024, local law amending the authorized exemption from taxes pursuant to sections 459-C and 467 of the New York State real property tax law for certain older and disabled residents, ID 12605. Greg moves, Susan seconds. All right, Jay.
All right, so 2 years ago, we increased the scale after New York State finally allowed us to be able to increase that. We had the option to go from a 50% exemption at $29,000 all the way up to a 50% exemption with your income at $50,000. Income is loosely defined as your adjusted gross. We subtract any IRA distributions, but we add back in untaxed Social Security. If there's any capital losses, we only count $3,000 per schedule. And then there's 38 other minor income changes that really never come into play. So I wanted to bring this back again because it was almost an interim step when we did that. So I did an analysis taking a look at what would have happened to our 2024 taxes if we had these scales in place. And I picked a random 42,000 and then going all the way up to the max at 50,000. So at 42,000, I estimated that we would have another 342 people that would be eligible for this exemption. Our tax base would have dropped by about 49 million, 48.5, and that's about a 2-cent increase in our tax rate, or about a $5.95 increase to the median house's tax bill. If we went all the way up to 50,000, we're looking at around an $81.5 million tax base decrease, or about a 3.3 cent, or about a $10 increase to the median single-family house. I'm not here advocating for an increase or to go anywhere. My only hesitation is if we go all the way up to the $50,000 scale. Potentially, according to what New York State has told me, we'll have about 653 new applicants next year, and that's a lot of work. That's an extra 325 hours on our staff, and it would be a good training for some of my newer staff to be able to have to process these senior exemptions, but I would need some project assistance to answer the phones and help public coming in as well.
All right, so just to be clear, so for each of these, we're going to have a resolution for the public hearing, and then the second one is the adoption of the local law, even though we haven't, we'll pass that here, and then we'll have the public hearing, and then, or I mean, assuming we pass it, and then it will go to the full legislature. So we're doing them all here, even though it still has to go to the legislature. Rich?
Just from a process standpoint, I'd suggest we talk about them in tandem so we don't vote on the public hearing before we, because proceeding to address it, I'm not sure I have appetite to do this.
Right.
Given what we're looking at with our budget.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So, but for this one, we have already moved and seconded the public hearing resolution, so.
If we could have the discussion on.
Yeah, we can discuss them both at the same time. Okay. So other discussion about the topic at hand, this exemption. Rich?
I have little appetite to proceed. I think in future years we could reconsider this and perhaps move that number up. But given what we're facing and the impacts we'd have on our assessment department, I'm reluctant to do this year.
Yeah.
Can I clarify that? Sure. This would be the for the 2025 assessment roll and would affect the 2026 county taxes.
Even so, I think we're heading into some tremendous uncertainty.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with Rich. My question about, like, maybe this is too complicated, but so an additional 342 people reduces the tax base by $48 million?
Correct. Because you're also increasing the 1,500 people that we already have within the program as well.
Right, okay.
So as that scale goes up, their exemptions would also go up.
Right, gotcha, okay. Susan?
I have a question. Sorry to not understand, but is this in any way related to remember the STAR exemption?
This is in addition to the STAR.
So this would be on top of that. Okay.
Yeah, the STAR is the one exemption that doesn't move the tax levy to the rest of the tax base. It's just state paying part of it.
Okay.
So this is for incomes less. The STAR income, I think, is $98,000.
Okay.
Mike?
Not totally understanding what our options are here, but I know that the elderly particularly are being affected by the cost of food and other things, and I would like to see us do something with it, you know, whether it's not, I certainly wouldn't want to see us go the full shot, but what can we do? What percentage can we go to?
I mean, the income, the way the state law is written, you define what the 50% exemption is. So that's called the M. So right now our M is 35,000. So if we wanted to increase it, you know, last time we did, we went from 29,000 to 35,000. So we can keep it the same. We could go to 36,000. You could say, all right, after 2 years, there's been an X% cost of living increase. So let's go to 37,500. And then the rest of the scale falls into place. So you could really pick any number for that 50% exemption. I just listed the two for comparison's sake.
We're at 29, you said?
We were at 29, and then in 2023, we updated to 35,000. And at that point, we said, I'll come back every few years to reconsider this.
Right, and what he's broken out here is 42 and then 50.
Right.
Did you have more, Mike?
Well, just that, as I said, I'd like to see us do something. I could move an amendment, but I'll wait for more discussion.
Okay, Greg.
Sorry, I'm maybe struggling to follow along here. Because I'm looking at the resolutions, and I'm looking at the second resolution, which is the adoption of the local law C of 2024. Where does it say what the M is?
It's in the local law, at the very end of Section 2. It's Section 2B states what the value of M would be.
Right, I'm not sure it's actually in the resolution itself,
Got it. So it's referencing,
the law.
and is this a draft? This is the draft that we see on packet pages 15 and 16?
Yes.
Okay. So if we were to modify something, we either, in Rich's scenario, potentially don't do anything, and it stays at 35.
Right.
If we do something, we would have to edit the draft law on packet page 15 and 16 as it relates to Doc ID 12596.
What we've decided.
If we decide.
Yes.
And it's being proposed at 50 currently.
I wouldn't say proposed. That's the number that's in there as a placeholder.
Right, I don't think
So I
Jay
don't-
is proposing
Yeah.
anything.
And I don't want to advocate but that's just a number that's written in there.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we say we want to go to 50,000 as the maximum, that would get edited into the local law, I assume, before we have the public hearing. Yeah, and then that's what would be put out for the public hearing. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And just the order of.
I know.
It's
It's
always
weird that we
confusing.
set the public hearing and then vote on it at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that the M isn't referenced in the action that we're actually taking.
Right, yeah.
But it kind of is because but anyways. I'm supportive of moving it up. I think I was the last time this came, and I think that we continue to have affordability issues with our elderly and other folks that are on fixed and limited incomes. And if this is a way that we can keep more seniors and folks with fixed incomes in their place, then I'd like to see us do that.
Okay, Mike?
I would move that we set it at 36.5.
Okay. I'm not sure we need a motion. Do we? Because I think we just, well, I guess we would have to vote on it, so yeah. Okay, 36.5, is there a second?
Second for purposes of discussion.
Okay, Rich would second that. Thoughts about that from anyone? Rich?
I could live with that.
Greg?
I don't think it's enough.
Okay.
I hear a 38.
Pardon?
Do I hear a 38 going once? 38.5.
No, I mean, that's not a lot of money, right? I mean, even 50,000's not. I mean, and I don't know, I feel like we have a responsibility to do our part, and we have an affordability issue, and these are the mechanisms in which we have, and unfortunately, yes, it does create more work, but if it provides relief for people who cannot source additional income, right, either through working or other things like that, they have a finite amount of resources, and everything is getting piled on top, more and more expensive. And to move it $1,500, I'd rather not move it than move it such a little incremental amount.
Okay, Rich?
Yeah, this is a zero-sum game. To the extent that we increase the exemption here, we're increasing taxes on other people, and we can't target where those tax increases go. And there's people that you could say are equally deserving, young people that are struggling, say that have children, that don't fit into the category, but have perhaps even higher daily expenses that they have to cover. You know, you look at the change in the median houses county tax bill of $595 or $1,003, that's a lot. I mean, we're talking, what, about 130 in our proposed budget? Was that the right number?
Yeah, something like that.
This would add to that pretty significantly in one swoop. You know, that's part of the reason I'm reluctant to do this, is that to give this to them, you're taking it from other taxpayers, and you can't direct who those taxpayers are. They're not necessarily the ones that can afford it.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I pretty much agree with Rich, and just, I would be happy with Mike's proposal. It's just, yeah, that's a large raise to other people. And also, the assessment department needing more staff. I mean, if it's going to put additional burden, then this isn't the time to do that, in my mind. But it sounds like we could bring this back next year and do it again.
We can bring this back every year. And one, and if I can point out, was it packet page, where are we? 22. This lists the current income scales for all of our school districts, our towns, and our villages. So I can't advocate for these exemptions, but I would encourage our legislators to advocate for this. Some of our school districts, like if you look at the Groton School District, 50% exemptions at $17,000, and if your income is $22,700, you get a 5% exemption. As an anecdote, I just talked to a senior. Her income rose $3,000 last year to $22,800, and her tax bill is $1,000 more. So her income is $22,800 with an extra $1,000 in her tax bill. So these are scales. I try, once you all take action or do something, I notify all of the taxing jurisdictions, but there's just some you can't get into. You know, luckily we don't have too many parcels in Odessa, but they're just a $10,000 income for $50,000.
Jay, when you notify municipalities, does it just get sent to their general box, or do we make sure that somehow it gets to all the council people,
Yep.
board members,
I
school board
typically
members?
send it to the town clerk, the town supervisor, and then the business manager for the school district. And villages would be the clerk and the mayor as well. Same with the city on that one.
All right, I think we need to go ahead and make a decision on this. It sounds, so there's a proposal at $36,500. I guess maybe the way to do this is to vote on that and then apply that to the public hearing resolution and the adoption of the local law. Does that make sense, Brittany? We're just sort of like incorporating that. Okay. Okay, so everyone clear what we're voting on? All in favor of that proposal? That would be 4, opposed, that would be 1, so that passes. So now we will be authorizing a public hearing for this particular proposed local law with the exemption of, or the M equaling 36,500. And I think technically we already moved it. Yes. So, okay, so we don't have to move it again. So any questions about authorizing the public hearing? Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, so now we have to move the resolution adoption of the local law number C of 2024. Local law amending the authorized exemption, which we just proposed, from taxes pursuant to sections 459-C and 467 of the New York State Real Property Tax Law for certain older and disabled residents, ID 12596. So, Rich, you want to move? Mike seconds. We clear what we're voting on? Any other discussion? This is with the change for 36,500. And the understanding that we can bring it back next year and raise it again if we want to. Okay, all right, all in favor? That's 4, opposed, that's 1. Okay, so that passes. All right, moving on to the next one.
Can I just say, in your table, Jay, I noticed that some school districts don't offer it at all, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, that's for the low-income disability. Groton has maybe been considering it, but I know I've talked to a couple residents there who don't get any break on their school taxes, and it's pretty significant with what their income really is.
All right, so let's do the same thing. We'll move the next one, then we can talk about the numbers and apply it to both. Okay, Rich moves, seconded by Susan. And this is authorizing a public hearing on proposed law, local law number D of 2024, local law amending the authorized exemption from taxes pursuant to section 458A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law for certain veterans, ID 12707. Okay, Jay.
So this is the alternative veterans exemption. This provides a benefit for veterans who served during a period of conflict. New York State has those specifically stated as to dates. That's on packet page 29. So you can see when World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and the Persian Gulf conflict, which started August 2nd, 1990, and has continued on through today. They haven't ended that yet. So as long as a veteran was honorably discharged and they served during those time frames, they're eligible for the wartime veteran. If they served in the combat theater, they're eligible for another higher exemption in addition. And then if they have a disability rating, they're eligible for 1/2 of their disability rating up until the caps that we set. So it's typically a 10% or a 15% exemption, and then a additional 10% that's added in. Where'd I go? Up until that cap. The last time that we increased these was back in 2000, when the cap may have not come into play more often than not. But now with the increase in values that we've seen, most of our veterans hit the cap and they don't realize the full percentage of their exemption. This is an exemption that I've never brought back, actually, for your review. So this is kind of a new look. I didn't know we did it in 2000. I was still just a valuation specialist back then, so I wasn't aware that we did it. So this is kind of a fresh look.
All right, Rich.
With everything I said on our last resolution, I would support Proposal 1. I think this does need a look. It's $1.50 on that median county tax bill, but I think we should recognize our veterans.
Once again, I'm agreeing with Rich on this. And Proposal 1 brings it up to
21, 14, and then 70.
Yeah. Okay, other questions, comments on this? Mike?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And my question is, you said the Gulf War is continuing. Does that include the Afghanistani action?
Yeah, everybody who served since that August 2nd, 1990 is considered eligible for this exemption.
Okay, so everybody since then?
Yep, anybody discharged from August 2nd, from that date through now is eligible for that.
Thanks.
Greg?
So we can look at this in the totality. Is there any way to easily tell us what the cost to the median home was with the last resolution that we just passed? With this, what was it, $1,500 increase?
Yeah, it can't, with a $1,500 exemption, we got to be looking at under $1.
Well, it's 34 million, right, is the present exemption amount? 34, 778,
I
814.
think Greg's talking about the one we just did, the previous one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to look at the checkbook.
Yeah, it can't be that significant to go up $1,500.
All right, so in your professional opinion, is this change more significant or less significant than the last resolution we passed?
I would say this one's slightly more. You're probably within range of me saying they're about equal.
Okay. I would have a struggle to change this one for veterans with the limited change that we made to our seniors and disabled. If we're going to hold our arguments true, I unfortunately can't place greater value in this category over seniors and disabled. While I fully 100% support our veterans and the sacrifices that they made, there are also several resources available out there that are continuing to support them. So if our logic is holding true and we want to not pass this cost on, I would ask that we do this in proportion with all of these changes so that it has the same impact.
You're assuming we're being logical.
I would hope we would be.
And I can give you the impact of what 36.5 would be by the time you meet at the legislature for this. I just can't run those numbers in the time we have now.
So for me, just in sort of response, I mean, it looks like based on the bottom of page 27, under proposal 1, raising the baseline to 21,000, that's going to affect 1,500, more than 1,500 veterans. And that's a lot more people than 356 in the previous one. And it comes at less of a cost to everyone else. So that's my reasoning. It's not that I care more about veterans than, you know, elderly people. It's about, unfortunately, about the numbers. And for me, this looks like we're getting more for less. Or more people are going to be positively affected.
The last one was 342 new additional on top of the 1,500 that are already receiving that. So it's really, it would have been 1,800. So it's actually more people affected in the last change than in the veterans one, because the veterans is the total number.
Is that the total, 1,576?
Yeah, that's the total number of veterans.
Well, then I was mistaken about that. But I guess my thinking is this increase is $1.47. I mean, we could say that we can only increase them at exactly the same amounts and 50 cents here and $1, but that's not what I'm choosing. I'm choosing that I think it's a relatively low number that everyone else has to absorb. So to me, that makes sense. Anyway, Rich?
Yeah, the number that jumped out at me was the year 2000. You know, we adjusted the seniors and disabled in 2023. We haven't looked at this in 24 years. Just a surprise to me. I think it's time.
Susan?
Yeah, I struggle. I want to support both. But I'm trying to remember where I read this, but I think the fastest, the highest increase in population in the county is considered as seniors. So this number is going to continue to grow. So even though I voted against it, that does concern me. So.
Okay, so we have, I think you made it, did you make a motion?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I would move that we adopt Proposal 1, the wartime at 21,000, the combat zone at 14,000, and disability at 70,000 as a change to the veterans exemption.
Okay, is there a second to that? Mike seconds. Any more discussion on that? And again, I think what we'll do is that we'll apply that to this first resolution that is about the public hearing, and then we'll apply that to the next resolution, which is the adoption of the local law. Okay. Questions on what we're voting on? All right, so all in favor of making M the Proposal 1? That would be 3, opposed. That would be 2, so that passes. On 1 second. Okay, so now we're at resolution adoption of local law number D of 2024. Local law amending the authorized exemption from taxes pursuant to section 458-A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law for certain veterans, ID 12599. Can I have somebody move that? Rich moves. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, Susan seconds. So again, this is with the Proposal 1 numbers, and this would be the adoption of the local law. And again, all of this still has to go to the legislature. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's 3, opposed, that's 2. Right. Great, thank you. And let's see, the next one is, am I on the right page? Authorizing a public hearing on proposed local law number E of 2024, local law adopting the authorized exemption from taxes pursuant to sections 485-B of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, ID 12708. Can I have somebody move that? Susan moves, seconded by Mike.
Amanda, I have a question for our council.
Sure.
I have a small business development in the city. Am I in a position I should recuse myself from discussion? I think if this passed, I might be eligible for it.
It would be appropriate for you to recuse yourself.
Okay. Madam Chair, I would like to recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay, great. So noted. I'm just still trying to make sure I'm on the right page. Is this the one, page 32?
It's 35?
32
Oh,
is the
okay.
public hearing.
32 and 35, okay.
Can Jay explain this one a little bit?
Yes, okay.
So this is the business improvement exemption. So this typically would allow an abatement for any new construction that added value. We have, as long as the cost of the new construction was $10,000 or more, this would allow for the phasing in of that increase in assessment. So if you added $1 million of value, the first year you'd get a 50% exemption, so you'd only be taxed as having an increase in assessment of $500,000. The next year it's 45% exempt, 40%, 35%. Every year it drops down that 10%. This was something that we had in place up until 1992, and then we effectively opted out of it by granting the exemption at 0% in the first year. You can't fully opt out, you just reduce your percentage to 0. We did that because we were afraid of big box stores coming in, taking advantage of this exemption. Now, one of the reasons why I'm bringing it back is I get a lot of discussion from small business owners, and I put a small addition onto my property, can I get a break? They're not big enough to go to the IDA, the project isn't of sufficient size to handle all of the fees and costs through them, so this would be a way to provide that sort of relief to smaller projects. Right now, I think we have 20 some odd projects in the county that we do administer this on, mostly in the town of Lansing and Dryden, I believe. But there's a chart, packet page 37, of who's in the exemption and who's out. Most places are still in the exemption except for us, the city of Ithaca, the city school district, and the town of Ithaca.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say, this, even though the county did not offer it for that period of time that you talked about, in Dryden, the village and the town and the school district always have, and have always found that it's an encouragement for development in an area, business development in an area that we need it. And you still end up with a 50% in the first year, 50% of the new value being assessed. So it's not as though you're giving away all of it. I don't know, have we got any more big box stores on the horizon and in downtown, or is there any reason to continue that? What's the city think about this?
I mean, I don't think this deterred the big box stores from coming.
Well, that was the reason that it went to 0. They said if they're going to come anyway, why do we have to give them an exemption?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Sue Stein was a big proponent of not giving them exemptions. I can remember that.
yeah, they're here.
And then ultimately we did on BJ's.
That was a little different because of the situation with the zoning for the village.
So let me just clarify. So you have heard from smaller businesses saying they would appreciate this, or?
Yes, I get that all the time.
Okay.
The IDA, I don't want to speak for them, but I want to say they at least have $1 million cap on what their projects are. That may be going up, but it's just not financially feasible for some of these projects to go to the IDA when there's this kind of alternative there to help spur our commercial development. I'm not advocating for or against, but we've seen a huge shift of our tax base to our residential portion of the tax base, and that's causing increased taxes on them. If we had a bigger commercial industrial base, that would help alleviate some of the tax burden on our residential properties.
Question for Brittany, or maybe Maury. If the 4 of us pass it, but there's an abstention, would it go on the consent agenda? No, okay. So okay. Thank you. Greg. I
guess this is a question for Maury, trying to understand Rich's abstention. I'm a commercial property owner in Tompkins County. Should I also abstain? But I'm also a private property, like a single family residential owner. So every time we talk about, and I'm curious, like where's the line on abstention?
If you have a belief that you would directly benefit or could directly benefit from passage of the exemption, then you should abstain.
So every time we vote on the tax?
No, direct benefit.
Correct. Like
So-
you wouldn't benefit from the veterans exemption, would you?
No.
Yeah, so.
Got it. Okay. And so, Jay, just to clarify, this is for new projects or improvements to existing parcels with 10,000 or greater, and this would be for the county's portion, the reduction of the tax bill.
Correct.
Right.
Now, we could take that 10,000 to have the cost go all the way up to 50,000, but I started that off at 10. You know, typically if something costs $10,000, your assessment probably isn't changing.
Sure.
So, but, you know, to try to encourage more, that's why the number is less right now in that resolution.
Okay. For those reasons, I will also recuse myself, such as Rich.
Okay, all right. And then there were 3.
Well, I have a commercial building, but I'm not planning any expansion.
Good, because then we couldn't vote on it.
Amanda,
Yeah,
they don't have to recuse themselves from the public hearing, though. It just authorizes the public hearing,
right.
just FYI.
Technically, right. Okay, that's true. So they should vote on the public hearing one.
If they want to, that's my understanding.
Yeah, it's up to them.
Okay, all right. Okay, back to the content of it. So if I'm trying to understand, so this is not one where we're looking at coming up with a number. You've got 10,000 in here, cost exceeding 10,000.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments? Do we know what we're voting on? All right, so this is setting the public hearing, and technically they have to vote to abstain. Yes. Okay, so Rich and Greg, you do have to vote to abstain, so. Okay, so this is for the public hearing. All in favor of the public hearing? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. So that passes. And then the follow-up, resolution adoption of local law number E of 2024, local law adopting the authorized exemption from taxes pursuant to sections 485B of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, ID 12600. Can I have somebody move that? Susan moves, Mike seconds. Same conversation. Any final questions or comments? All right, all in favor? Abstentions? 2 abstentions, and so that passes. Thank you. Welcome back, commercial property owners. All right, we are on to resolution authorizing a public hearing on proposed local law number F of 2024, local law adopting the tax exemption allowed pursuant to new real property tax law 421-P ID 12709. And I think this is on page 40. Can I have somebody move that? Susan moves, seconded by Greg. Okay, Jay.
All right, this is a new section that was just authorized in the 2024-25 New York State budget. This is one of 2 new 421-P sections of the real property tax law that was added. I guess we're running out of numbers and letters and we got to duplicate them. But this provides an exemption when you add a newly created accessory dwelling unit to your property. So rather than getting hit with the full increase in assessment in year 1, they went through this complicated scale. So year 1, you get a 100% exemption due to the increase in assessment, 75, 50, 25, 15, 5 to year 7, you are now fully taxable. So this would be a way to try to encourage those accessory dwelling units as a way to increase our housing supply, which would then hopefully decrease rents and make things more affordable. The increase in your income that you get from the unit may be able to keep you in your property a little bit more as well too. Again, not advocating for or against. But.
Okay, questions, comments? Greg?
I would fully support this. I think this is one of the fastest ways that we can increase our housing stock and also do it on a small scale where it's not just large developers taking advantage, but this has a direct benefit on traditionally single-family homeowners who are willing to make an investment in the housing stock to receive some benefit or some assistance from the government to do that by phasing in their taxes. I think is a wise move and a step, hopefully, which could spur some exciting growth with accessory dwelling units.
Rich?
I agree with Greg. I did have a question on page 41. The title exemption granted references RPTL section 421P. Is that where the scale is that you show on page 43? So
Yes.
if we're voting, we're doing this scale. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, other questions, comments? And, okay, so this one is setting the public hearing. All in favor? That's unanimous.
I guess I did have a question. Some zoning laws allow these additional units while it's being occupied by an in-law or something like that. Then I think they have to be removed. And they just apply for a removal of their assessed value, or what happens then?
So if they were to move out of the unit, you mean?
Yeah, I think sometimes the zoning allows these temporarily.
I'd have to look into that. Some of these are, if ownership changes, the exemption goes away.
Yeah.
So if you were to sell that, some of those aren't. The legislation, I think, was kind of mute on that point. So I don't know how this is actually going to play out with that. The last time I checked, the state hadn't even updated our assessor cheat sheet on this exemption yet, on what happens at the time of transfer. But I can look into that, and you'll get an answer by the time you're voting on it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to move the next one, which is the resolution adoption of local law number F of 2024, local law adopting the tax exemption allowed pursuant to new real property tax law 421-P, ID 12601. Greg moves, seconded by Rich. Any last questions? This is the law related to the previous public hearing. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Jay, that was amazing. That was the most exemptions I've ever discussed in my life.
And I owe a big thanks to Murray for going through and rewriting all of this into a legible format. So
Yes.
much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for working on that. And
And this was how many out of how many exemptions?
There's like 200, 300 that New York State offers, from the real property tax law to the Vienna Convention to Lord knows what. So,
well, we appreciate the opportunity to look at these and talk about them again. So
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
can I ask one?
Sure.
I had an appointment. Was that done before I got here? Sorry, I was on the phone. So.
Yes, it
Perfect.
was.
Appreciate that.
All right, administration. Can I please have someone move the resolution to update the administrative policy manual, policy 02-49, county employee election poll workers, ID 12699. Greg moves, seconded by Susan. And I believe this is a new policy?
That's correct.
All right, do you want to say anything about it?
Sure, happy to. So this was mentioned at our last Government Operations Committee meeting, I believe, and knowing that the November election is coming up, we wanted to ensure that if we did have county employees who were interested in working the polls for that November election, that we had a clear policy and process outlined for that effort. County administration worked with county attorney, our elections commissioners, as well as human resources to put together, and finance as well, to put together this policy in rather short order in order to make that deadline. So again, I think it does a pretty nice job of clearly outlining the process and procedure, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, great. Rich and then Greg.
Yeah, on line 7 of the resolution, I would remove the words clearly establishes the.
Yes, thank you. That is an error.
And then on page 47, in C, poll worker tasks, I'd add the letter S after assist voter. And I had a recommendation for the form at the end of the line that reads, I do hereby attest. I would add, and am eligible to serve as a poll worker.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would say this is great. You know, this certainly would help the Board of Elections, but also ensure that we should have adequate numbers of people that
Do the
can
job.
make our elections happen.
Did folks get those small changes that Rich said? Okay. Let's see, I had Greg. Did you have your?
Are those for the friendly or?
Oh, yeah, I think.
Right, no one objects to those?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is really good, and I appreciate you doing this. I just want to make sure we hear from Steve and Alana on, their thoughts on this, if this helps clarify and satisfy. And then also, I would hope, and understanding that there is a potential increase in cost to the county with overtime being paid, but it looks like it's being paid out of the department, the home department?
While the pay for the day of working at the polls is covered by the Board of Elections.
Got it, but overtime pay would come from the department?
That's right.
Okay, so I guess I would just make a general statement. I hope that departments are encouraging of folks, even if it does require, I mean, this is good overtime. Some overtime is needed, some overtime is, hours not well spent. These are hours well spent, so I appreciate this.
Alana and Steve, did you have any other things you wanted to say, or questions or comments, if you're there?
I just want to say I appreciate this coming forward. I think this should help us in future elections, and hopefully we will get a large number of county employees that want to do this. And I appreciate working with Bridget. She was, we were talking for the past couple of days about this. So.
Great, all right. Mike?
So if we're going to pay the overtime, what are we paying that based on? Is it based on the election worker rate, or is it based on their rate as an employee?
It would be based on the rate of the employee, because so essentially the employee, under the discretion of the department head, would have the opportunity to encourage, say for example, flex time for the rest of the week. It's all dependent on how many hours they work that work week. So if they work up to 12 hours, say for example, on election day, that would impact the overall 35 or 40-hour work week.
So the election time gets calculated with their
Yes.
regular 35 or 40-hour a week. Okay.
That's right.
All right. All right. Thank you. That explains that to me. What I'm concerned about here is not the idea of having employees be election workers. I think we've had that over the years. What I'm concerned is that we have to be very, very careful not to make it look like we're forcing or our employees to do this, or saying to them that it's expected of you. When you say having department heads encourage it, I think it should be that they should not discourage it. But we're a county with a legislature predominantly headed by one party, and it could be you need to be very, very careful about election workers and political things. And I just want to put that out as a caution.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I want to clarify what I had stated. I meant to state that department heads would work with their employees to encourage flexing the time during the work week, not encouraging the participation and working on the polls. So thank you for that.
Good.
Although it does say in the legislative policy statement, Tompkins County Legislature encourages employees, when approved by the department head, to serve as a poll worker. So, yeah, Rich.
I guess I don't have a problem with that language, that part of our job as a county is to make sure we conduct elections. And you're not telling people how to vote or running them for the benefit of a particular party. You know, we certainly have to be really careful about any language along those lines, but I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Greg? No. Okay. Anything else about the policy, questions? All right, so let's go ahead and vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Bridget, do you have other updates while we're talking to you?
Sure, thank you. Just briefly, in the vein of preparing for the upcoming election, we will be convening the various departments that would have some sort of role in election security, and that can look a number of different ways. We'll be convening to do a brief tabletop discussion exercise on a specific scenario so that we can make sure all of us are prepared for that leading up to it, as well as for the day of the elections. So we'll provide a summary of that after that occurs. And then just shifting gears a bit, the strategic plan, I did want to make sure everyone was aware that we have extended our contract with our consultant, Barry Dunn, to move into the implementation phase of the strategic plan. We did have some remaining grant funds to use for that purpose. So our consultant will be working one-on-one with departments to craft specific implementation and action plans for each of the objectives outlined in the overall strategic plan. We'll also be developing more formal tools to present updates to this committee as well as the wider legislature as to where we are at with each of those objectives. So you can look forward to that as well. And that's all the updates I have.
Great. Any questions for Bridget, County Administration? All right, thank you. Okay, County Historian. We are looking to approve their revised bylaws. So this is a resolution approval of amended bylaws, Tompkins County Historical Commission, ID 12615. Can I have somebody move that? Mike moves, Susan seconds. And it looks like this is following the template that we have been laid out and sending to the various advisory boards. And from my memory of the things that we were hoping would change, this looks in line with our policy. Mike?
Exactly so. And kudos to Joe Mariano, who's a member of the commission, for working on these and adding the provisions that the county wanted. All the other provision, we've added a position of vice chair to be elected by the membership. And he's currently serving as vice chair, and that helps us because the county historian is designated as the chair. If that person's not there, we need a vice chair. So that's happened. But yeah, but that's exactly what you said, Amanda. It now hopefully conforms to the template.
Yeah, it's great. And as these have been coming through, I'm really appreciative of all the boards and the folks who have, you know, taken the time to revise this, and the clerks for making sure, you know, we're getting things in line. So it's great. Other questions or comments about these bylaws? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now a couple of legislature items. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of remote attendance. And this isn't something that we'll vote on today, but talking with Dan and Maury, we wanted to clarify some things about, you know, we have this local law about extenuating circumstances. There's also the various state laws about all of that. And we wanted to consolidate that and put it into the rules of the legislature so that we're all very clear what this means. And I don't think that remote attendance is going to go away anytime soon. So I feel like we need to have it be as clear as possible. And I just thought adding a whole nother rule instead of trying to like piece it into other places would make sense. So this is sort of my draft. The red, this is packet page 55. The red are added sentences, and then the whole Rule 18 remote attendance is just all new. And this is completely up for discussion. If folks feel like this is incorrect or, doesn't make sense, or you want to change things, that's what this time right now is to talk about. And Maury can help us understand it. And then my hope would be that next month we would have a resolution to vote on this to add it to the rules. So, comments and questions. Susan.
I'm just curious, remote attendees do not count towards quorum?
That's correct. They don't count towards a quorum, but they can vote.
That's currently the
That's currently it?
currently the system.
Yeah. And I think also when there's a question, we had discussed that the chair would make the decision. If there is a question or confusion, the chair would be the one to say, the person doesn't count towards quorum, but the chair could also say, I'm not going to call on you, or I'm not going to permit you to vote because you technically don't have an actual extenuating circumstance.
Right. I should have clarified that a remote attendee who has an extenuating circumstance is one who wouldn't count toward a quorum but would be allowed to vote. Other remote attendees are basically, for purposes of the rule, treated as a member of the public. They can be recognized to speak in the chair's discretion, but do not vote.
Other comments or questions? Rich?
On page 56, there's the last paragraph. The Tompkins County Legislature may hold fully remote meetings. Under New York state law, are there conditions when we can do that, or can we just decide to do that? I thought it needed some declaration of emergency, perhaps, or something. Or can we just do it?
I agree with your general, I have the same general impression. I can't cite you chapter and verse at the moment, but can have that clarified, before it becomes a voting item.
Yeah, and we can reword that, but I did try to put in, and the rules shall not apply during a federal, state, or local disaster emergency. But if that needs to be more explicit, could be.
Yeah, we could say something, just thinking out loud, the Tompkins County Legislature may hold fully remote meetings under circumstances allowed by state law, and that would.
Yeah. Mike?
Some of this is good. I will vote against it because I believe in in-person meetings. I believe that we're watching, remote work. People are returning to the offices across the nation. And you may always have some Zoom opportunities, but I think that in-person meetings are the way that we should be going.
Okay. This is, just to clarify, this is based on our local law that we have already passed.
I understand.
So, Rich?
Mike, I had a question. The sentence at the beginning, Tompkins County legislators are expected to attend meetings in person. Is there something we could change to that to make you more comfortable?
Always? No. Thank you, Rich, but I just, and I explained it when we voted on the local law. I didn't support that. I fully understand the reasoning and the thoughts here, but I think when we see people zooming in from caucuses, or from vacations rather than other things, even though they're maybe not voting. It's questionable for our constituents.
You have more, Rich?
Yeah, I think there's a balance there. I will support this language when it comes to vote, but it's far preferable if we're here. I don't believe we've really seen abuse of the remote attendance provisions that we have. And from the standpoint of representing the public, I think it's better to have somebody here remotely than not have them here at all. So that's the trade-off for me. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think, we've talked for years about what are these extraordinary circumstances and, what does that mean? And I hope that this helps clarify that if you're at a political campaign event, that's your choice to go be there, and that is not a reason that you can be absent from the meeting. So something like that, or a vacation. If you're on vacation, you can tune in and listen, but you aren't necessarily going to be a part of the conversation or vote on anything. So I think, like you said, we haven't really seen people abusing this, but my hope is that this makes it more clear. So any other comments? All right, so I'll look at Brittany and Katrina to get this into a resolution for next month. Okay, great, thank you all. All right, so now we have a discussion, and then we do have a resolution. I guess we can talk a little bit and then we can move the resolution. There is an updated chart for legislators' salaries in other counties. Chemung and Broome were added in here for your edification.
I note they seems to have grown substantially. The populations, I think, are larger than 841,000 people in Chemung County. I don't think is the case.
You don't think?
No.
Oh,
No.
yeah.
No. And Broome County is not 2 million.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
Mike?
Well, I had proposed the resolution, so I will move it, and then it was for discussion, basically.
Sure, okay, so that is the resolution setting salaries of the members of the Tompkins County Legislature to be elected for the term commencing January 1, 2026. And Mike moves. Is there a second to the resolution? Susan. Okay, Mike, discussion?
Yeah. First of all, let me point out this is for 3 years because our next term was only going to be for 3 years. And it's important, in my view, that we recognize what happened in the last term as far as salaries. The first 2 years, there was no increase because of pandemic and our feeling that the budgets were going to be very, very hurtful. We did get the federal money, which made quite a difference in our budget those 2 years, but our salaries stayed the same. They've gone up the last 2 years slightly. But I think at this point, considering the workload and considering the time commitment that we have, travel commitment that we have, that we should increase this. And I had suggested 25,000 each of the 3 years. And also the other change here was I had suggested that the vice chair receive 1 1/4 of the salary. We already have the chair at 1 1/2 the salary. And I thought that would recognize the additional work that the vice chair does. I served as vice chair for a number of years, and I can tell you what the vice chairs do now, certainly since the late teens, 20 teens, is a lot more work than they had done previously. So I think that's why I had put it in there. But I'm open to any other suggestions about the salary amount. But I think it's important that we set this now so that it doesn't become a political football, and so that the people who are considering running for the positions, remember there's already 2 new seats that are going to be on this legislature. I don't know where we're going to put them, but we're going to have that, that those people are aware when they decide whether or not they want to run what the stipend is.
Yeah, thank you. Other comments, Greg?
Yeah, I would propose an amendment. I think as we talk about accessibility, and none of us are guaranteed to be here at the end of this term, right? And because of all of the things Mike mentioned, time, distance from the legislature chambers, and all of the other requirements, and 30 hours per week, you know, on average, right? Some weeks it's 50, some weeks it's 15, but right, it's on average. I think we should look at the living wage of $18.45 and hold that as the constant. And so if you multiply $18.45 for 30 weeks, 52 weeks, it's about 1,560 hours. So that's what I'm using for my calculations. And so it would be, the first year would be $28,782. And then I would propose, similar to many of our contracts, that there'd be a 3% increase each year. Because I'm not suggesting a change in the living wage, right? I'm suggesting holding that 1845 constant and just adding 3% essentially to that, recognizing full well that the projected living wage next year is well into the low 20s. So I still think it will end up below that, but it gives us at least a baseline to work from. So the 3 would be 28,782, and then with a 3% in year 2, and then a 3% increase again in year 3.
Do you have those figures or not?
I do. So it would be 28,782, and then it would be 29,645 and 46 cents, and then it would be 30,534 and 82 cents.
Well, let's not have the cents
Sure, we can drop the cents.
in the resolution.
We can drop the cents. I'm just saying that's what.
Is there a second for that? Susan, seconds. Questions, comments on this amendment? Rich?
I understand all the reasons. We've certainly had this discussion for a long, long time. I look at this as work and not work. And I don't think that comparing ourselves to the other workers at the county or workers in general is entirely apt. It's somewhat apt, but I'm not going to support. I anticipate being in the minority. That's okay. But I think we're compensated appropriately. Thanks.
I feel very torn on this. I appreciate the calculation, and it makes a lot of sense, even if you drop the cents. And I do like the idea of a progression and not just a flat rate for 3 years. And I sure would have liked to be earning more the past 4 years, but you know, there are going to be 2 additional legislators, and that means additional travel training funds for the legislature. I just feel so torn, really, honestly, with all the challenges that we're facing in the budget this year. So I guess I don't know. Other comments on the amendment? Greg?
I think to your point about those expenses, historically, those accounts, when fully funded, have not gone fully spent.
Right.
Right.
That's true.
So there are several legislators that don't access travel and training.
At all.
And there are some that don't access local mileage and those type of things. So I do think if we took a hard look at our legislature-specific budget, we could gain some by, really sort of challenging what is priority and what is needed. I just look at this as, again, I'm fortunate to be able to have the flexibility to do this and to have additional income. But if someone were to do this and would not be able to have that flexibility, you can't survive on this alone. And I think that precludes a number of people from potentially taking this on as a job, because it can be a job. And it definitely seems like a job some days. And so that's where I want to make sure that we're not excluding it to either, retired folks or folks that have, financial independence and, all of those things. That's really where I just want to be able to create a more inclusive government. And I also think it's a nominal compensation for, plenty more work than the value provided.
Yeah, thank you. I think I agree with that. I mean, I definitely agreed with that when I first came on 7 years ago, and it was raised a little bit at that time. And I think, even in 3 years, 30,000 is not going to be very much in the way things are going. Mike?
I don't think we ever intended, at least going back, that this was going to be a full-time salary for anyone.
No.
Fact is, when we did raise it, and Tim Joseph was the chair of the legislature at that time, the thought was to have it to a level where that, with another half-time job, for example, could support a person if that's what they wanted to do, come on the legislature. And so that, I just don't think this should be a full-time salary. We're elected officials, and the very nature of that means that it's partially, if not all, voluntary, and that we should not be looking out for ourselves foremost. We should be looking out for the taxpayers. So, I mean, if we wanted to have a progression, maybe we could do something somewhere in the middle, for example, go to 20, 26, 27, 28, like that. I could support something like that, but I don't know if I can go as far as Greg is suggesting.
I definitely hear you, Mike, and I agree with everybody. I don't think 25,000 or 30,000 is a full salary. I mean, that's not, yeah. And I have to say, there are some legislators who don't put in 30 hours a week, and there's some that put in 50 hours a week. So
that's true. That's always been the case.
That's always true, yeah. So, with some people you're getting your money's worth, and others maybe you're not. Other questions or comments? So we still have Greg's amendment to go to his calculation of a living wage. That's what's on the table.
The current living wage is a baseline for the calculation.
Right.
But after that point, it's no longer.
Right. It will be changing every year into the future.
But we've held it static in this calculation.
Right. Yeah, and once we set this, well, I guess that's not true. We could, and at any time, the legislature could bring this up again and say, I want to change our salaries for next year. We can do that. I don't know that that's been done, because that's.
I think that's a terrible precedent.
Right.
And I thought
But technically, it could happen.
When the sheriff's wage was changed by this legislature during midterm, I thought it was a terrible thing to do. But you're right, it can be done.
It could be done.
I would agree with Mike that we should not be doing that during the current term. The only thing I think we could do is either reduce or freeze. You know, a negative reduction would be appropriate, but not an increase.
Susan?
So would this would not go into effect immediately, it's for the next?
The next elected
So
group.
26, we're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I struggle with the optics of increasing when we're having such a difficult year. So I think if it does pass, it would be important to make sure that it's known that it's for 26. Not immediate.
Yeah, and, right, and then that legislature in 2027 would set the salaries for the next term. Nobody's really spoken about the vice chair salary proposal. Does anyone have further thoughts on that? Rich?
As a standalone, I think that makes some sense. I would support that, but yeah.
Okay, all right, so we need to vote on the amendment. Let's go ahead and do that. All in favor of Greg's amendment to the 28,000, 29,000, 30,000 approximate numbers in favor? That would be 2, opposed, that would be 3, so that fails. All right, so we're back to 25,000 for each year. Are there any other amendments? Mike?
If I'd been my own, I would make that suggestion, having heard the discussion, and I certainly understand it. I would like to see us maybe perhaps change it to 26, 27, 28,000 increase.
That is an amendment. Is there a second? Susan would second that. Any discussion on that amendment? All right, all in favor of that amendment? That would be 4, opposed, that would be 1. So that amendment passes. So now we're not looking at 25,000 a year, we're looking at 26. And in 2027, it would be 27. Oh, that's cool. And in 2028, it would be 28. There we go.
It's like getting, dollars for your birthday,
Yeah.
18, you get $18, It's 2026, you get 26,000.
Yeah, my uncle used to do that.
Expecting to be logical.
All right, so is there any more discussion on this? Again, it will have to go to the full legislature and be voted on there.
Might be amended again, who knows?
Right, there could be other amendments at that point. Okay, all in favor of this amended resolution, please raise your hand. That would be 4, opposed, that would be 1. All right, well, thank you. This is good to get in the books, and we'll see how the conversation goes at the legislature. Great. Okay, moving on. I do not have a chair's report. We talked to Brittany already. Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Charlene. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome. What do you got for us?
Really quickly, I'll run through a few things. So our newsletter is still going strong. We've had great responses from the workforce, and we'll be moving into a SharePoint model, and that would be to centralize the equity and diversity process to prepare for our new intranet. Thank you to our new website and all the great things we're able to do. On this intranet, we plan on sharing internally and externally with community members archived newsletters, reading and discussion materials, webinars, trainings, articles. The interns and myself have even thought about having a discussion around what a discussion board would look like, where our employees would be able to write like, hey, I'm looking for this training, or I need this type of help in the equity and diversity realm, and we can all engage in thought partnership around that. So we're excited about the new intranet and the possibilities around educating our workforce. The next thing is our equity exchange reading and discussion group has been going well. Our next iteration will be on September 17th from 12 to 2 at Price Conference at 555 Brown Road. And it will be, our topic of discussion is intersections of identity and health, and that will be facilitated by our very own Emily Kuhl, who is our senior psychiatric social worker. So very excited. If you all have some time to make it, we'll be there from 12 to 2 on September 17th. Just a heads up for the rest of the organization as well as you all, know before trainings. You all are going to be going through your annual trainings. There are 2 to 3 new trainings that you will be engaging in relation to equity and diversity. The first one will be diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. The second one is Introduction to Cultural Competence. That will be for all staff members. Then we have Inclusive Hiring and Why Diversity Matters, and that one will be for managers only. So please keep a lookout for that. This is another way for us to keep the conversation flowing. Very low-hanging fruit, but we want to make sure that our workforce is abreast and aware of how we see E&D, DEI, all of the acronyms, all of the above here at Tompkins County. Lastly, I have an update. There will be an EEO message that will go out through our town hall, a follow-up email, and UKG. And EEO is equal employment opportunity. We need to update our demographic profile as an organization, both at the state and the federal level. So we're asking all of our employees to please update their demographic information through our UKG platform. That allows for us to have a more accurate demographic profile of our employees. And also it is a part of our commitment to being an equal opportunity employer. So we are really looking forward to seeing that data updated. We're looking for folks to tell us if you're a veteran, tell us if you have a disability. We would like to curate experiences around that information too. So I know you all have UKG as well, so it'd be great to have your demographic profile updated. All of this information is confidential. No one will know who you are. We are just disaggregating the data so we can take a look at our profile. That's my update.
Great, thank you. Questions for Charlene? Mike?
I just wanted to say thank you to Charlene for something. When we interview candidates for vacant positions, we often have a group appointed to do that. And usually the groups come up with questions to ask the various applicants. And I wanted to thank Charlene for giving us a series of questions on DEI for the groups to choose from and to be able to use. And I just think that was very, very useful and much appreciated.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
County Attorney, Maury Josephson.
I think you've heard enough from me already at the meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions either here or my door is always open, so feel free to call or email.
Great, thank you. Questions for Maury? All right, Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
You may not know the answer to this, but are our social services attorneys all full-time, or do we have part-time social services attorneys?
I believe the 3 of them are full-time.
Okay, because there's been some ethics opinions recently about part-time social services attorneys, and we wanted to be careful about that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Lori?
Thank you. I have nothing for today.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. We already heard from Dominic. Are there any committee members who have anything you want to bring up in the last 7 minutes of our meeting?
don't worry, we'll see everybody again here in a few hours.
Oh, that's right. We will all be back here at 4:30. Bring your budget books. And great. Thank you all. Another
cushions.
good meeting from our committee. Thank you. We're adjourned.